TopMedTalk.
Welcome to TopMedTalk, the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. Stand by for a healthy conversation. But first, the 2026 International Practicum on Cardiopulmonary Exercise Testing will be held from September the 16th to the 18th of this year. It is organised by iPoets, the International Perioperative Testing and Training Society. Come and join us at this premier educational event designed for clinicians, scientists and healthcare professionals interested in sport, exercise and perioperative medicine. Check out ebpom.org for the best prices and information now. That's ebpom.org. And remember, this is an International Perioperative Testing and Training Society accredited event. So when you attend, you can get your iPoets accreditation showing that you are a practitioner who has reached a high standardized level of competence in performing and interpreting cardiopulmonary exercise testing for patients preparing for major surgery. Check out ebpom.org now. It's TopMedTalk Classic time. We're going to be listening to a conversation from 2018. It's about Ebola, which, of course, if you're across the news, we've had a recent outbreak of in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We're talking here to Dan Martin, OBE, and he gets into the detail on this awful infectious disease and how it can be treated. Don't forget, of course, the TopMedTalk archive is always available to you for free. All you need to do is go to your podcatcher and scroll all the way down, and you'll find we never remove any of the episodes from the timeline. We leave them all there for your education and enjoyment.
All right. We are here at the Intensive Care Society State of the Art meeting 2018 in London at the Queen Elizabeth II Centre, right in the heart of London. And I'm Desiree Chappell, your host and anchor. And I'm joined today by Editor-in-Chief of TopMedTalk, Monty Mythen. Monty, hello again.
Hey, Desiree. Great
Hi.
to be back. Delighted to be joined by Dr. Dan Martin, a consultant, mainly in intensive care at the Royal Free Hospital in London, but also a colleague of mine from University College London. We allegedly share an office some days, which means Dan's got his own office. Is that right, Dan?
Absolutely. It's very nice it is too.
And many of us know Dan and know his voice from TopMedTalk
Right.
with regards to extreme Everest and climbing high mountains. Dan summited Everest. He's famous for having the lowest recorded levels of oxygen in a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine. And there's going to be a little bit of this about that at this meeting, Dan, I think. Is that right? A little bit of extreme physiology?
Absolutely. There's a session with some discussion about physiology at high altitude and how that relates to the critically ill patient and some other extremes in there too. So I'm very excited to go and listen to that.
Dan, another reason you're famous is you've been part of the team at the Royal Free, but also part of the international team of critical care doctors that have treated Ebola patients and treated Ebola patients successfully. if it's okay to say
Absolutely.
so.
My involvement with the Ebola work is through the Royal Free Hospital, as you say, which is the designated centre for treating patients with viral haemorrhagic fevers in the UK. And my role is the delivery of critical care to those patients. We have an isolation unit that they go to in a special part of the hospital. But when they arrive there and things become difficult, we have to mobilise intensive care up to this isolation unit and care for the patients. So we were involved with the 3 patients who were British patients who were tested positive with Ebola and treated in the UK. And as part of that, we're part of a larger WHO group managing patients in the developed world with viral haemorrhagic fevers.
And prior to that recent round and the world getting together and trying to treat Ebola, when we'd been previously told it was untreatable, it turned out that it's not necessarily a completely fatal illness.
No, not at all. And we had difficulties in the run-up to treating these patients because there was skepticism that you could survive Ebola once you'd gone into multiple organ failure. But to us, this is the job that we do. We look after these patients usually. We've looked after patients with Lassa fever and Crimean Congo haemorrhagic fever previously. Ebola was new for our team, but we felt that there should be no difference in treating these patients than any other patients with an infective cause to their illness. Clearly, we have to be doing that in a very safe way, not endangering the staff or the team. But this is a viral infection, and given good basic intensive care with some specialist input from experimental therapies, there's no reason why we couldn't cure these patients of their illness.
It's highly contagious. the disease.
Absolutely.
Well, how do you manage that?
We have a specially built unit within our hospital. The patients are managed within what looks like a plastic tent. It's called a Trexler isolator. So the staff are outside the tent and the patient is within the tent. And this is the system as we have used successfully on our unit for about 40 years or so now. And no member of staff has ever been infected using that system. And what you can see now is there are more modern versions of this Trexler system, a sort of mobile plastic cube, if you like, for managing patients in this way. We use that system instead of perhaps what you're more familiar with is seeing people dressed up in what we call PPE, personal protective equipment, the sort of head to toe protection. We don't use that. We put the patient in the isolator instead. And for us, that works very well.
So you're not wearing a big hazmat suit?
No, not at all. So it's quite the opposite of the images you see on the news, which is fine if you're treating very small numbers of patients. So we can treat 1 or 2 patients maximum. Out in the field in West Africa, this system is not going to be possible. If you're treating hundreds or thousands of people at once, then it's back to the standard PPE approach to things where the healthcare workers are protecting themselves and the patients are free and open.
What type of training is involved with this, and how do you get kind of everyone on board and talking about the team approach? I mean, obviously communication has to be good and all these different things. So
there's an enormous team involved in caring for these patients, and it starts right from the moment that we have to go and repatriate them from another country. This is not often diagnosed in country, although sometimes it is. Frequently, these patients are brought back from West Africa, typically, with the diagnosis. We work very closely with the Royal Air Force, who have a specialist team who go out and collect the patient. And we run drills every year for receiving a patient. Mm-hmm. So an actor plays the part of the patient, and we run through the whole drill of a patient in what we call a transport isolator, bringing the patient through the hospital, up a special lift into the unit and transferring them into the isolation area. And we go through that process in fine detail, making sure that we don't expose members of staff or members of the public, because the hospital still has to function as a hospital during that time, to any risk at all. And then I run through with my ICU staff on a regular basis how to manage these patients. We run simulations, simulating intubating patients, putting in intravenous lines, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. We run these sessions on a regular basis so that everyone is at least familiar with what may happen, because we never know when the next patient's coming. When the call comes, they'll be there within 12, 24 hours, and we need to be ready for it.
Yeah. I would imagine there's some continuity, so it's the same people on the team, but are you always bringing trainees in and new staff, or how do you kind of manage?
Yeah, we have a core of us who are doing this the whole time, and then obviously people come and people go, so we have to sort of manage that by retraining people, which is why we try and train these people once, if not twice a year, to keep up their skills and familiarization with the unit. But it's a difficult task, keeping everyone familiarized with something that they may actually never see if they're only there for a short time in the hospital.
And what is your involvement in the international community with this? Do you do training in other places in the world?
Most often people come to us. So this week, in fact, there's a team from Australia coming to the unit, and we'll be able to talk them through the process of what we do and how we do it. And it's not just the practicality of how you may put an intravenous line into a patient, but there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff about the logistics and how to manage the rest of the hospital when something like this is going on. You know, whilst something as major as this is happening in the hospital, everything else has to continue without being affected by it, because we still have a duty of care to the rest of the patients in the hospital.
Do people ever sort of pitch up at the airport with these sorts of diseases? I mean, how's it contained?
Very good question. And I guess ultimately people could be walking through an airport with this kind of disease at any time. As you know, there's an Ebola outbreak currently in West Africa. It only takes a sort of 12-hour flight or so to be in the country. The incubation period of these sorts of diseases is anything up to a week or so. So you may not know that you're even infected with a disease like this until you're in the country already. It's less common for us to be alerted to anyone sort of coming through Heathrow, if you like, with a disease. What tends to happen more is that people present to their local hospital. They have symptoms which are not particularly specific. They have fever. They feel a bit lethargic. Usually the trigger is a recent travel history. So anyone with that travel history to a sort of high-risk area, then they'll usually get on the phone to us or one of the other sort of national advisory services as to whether they should begin testing for one of the viral hemorrhagic fevers.
From the isolation perspective, before they know that, how do they treat that patient and react to that patient Because otherwise you're going to be scaremongering and
Yeah,
isolating everyone who's travelled who's got a bit of a fever.
absolutely.
So that's me gone.
Absolutely. What we're in the process of at the moment is setting up a new system throughout the UK under the guise of high consequence infectious diseases, so that every hospital in the country will know how to initially isolate someone should they feel the need to, and also who to contact and what information they'll be required to give. And then there'll be a much more streamlined process of getting a patient who's suspected of having a viral hemorrhagic fever, or perhaps one of the airborne high-consequence infectious diseases, which are in many ways more frightening with airborne spread of a disease, to get them into a regional infectious diseases centre prior to going to one of the now allocated high-level consequence disease specialist centres.
Dan, you said there's an outbreak currently in West Africa. Is there any learning from your experiences and the global experiences that's translated into new treatments that's now finding their way back to West Africa?
I think the key things that we learned, everybody focuses really on the experimental therapies that are available. These are expensive and difficult to deploy, and actually the evidence behind them is weak at best. So I think defocusing on that is good in the first instance, but actually focusing on the things that made a difference may be more deliverable in a developing country, which is just the implementation of very good basic care for these patients. So attending to fluid requirements, electrolyte requirements, prophylactic use of antibiotics to stop secondary bacterial infection. These were the things that killed people during Ebola: dehydration, electrolyte disturbance, renal failure. All of these things are preventable, but what you have to understand is there's no real capacity to deliver intensive care in many of the places that the disease is rife in. So it's not an ideal situation.
So where you can deliver intensive care, good basic intensive care and not giving up is the secret, if you can do that.
Absolutely. A sort of conglomerate of clinicians who were involved in treating these patients in a developed, resource-rich environment. We published our findings in the New England Journal of Medicine, and what was very clear from that was if you can deliver intensive care to these patients, it is effective, which poses the problem, how do we do that in a developing country?
Dan, thank you so much for sitting down with us. It's an
Absolute
enlightening
pleasure.
conversation. I'm glad we could talk about
Thank
that.
you.
So,
Dan, thank you very much. TopMedTalk.
And remember, the 2026 International Practicum on Cardiopulmonary Exercise Testing will be held from September the 16th to the 18th of this year. Come and join us at this premier educational event designed for clinicians, scientists and healthcare professionals interested in sport, exercise and perioperative medicine. Check out ebpom.org for the best prices and information now. That's ebpom.org.